Hello, welcome to Mental Health Hour. This is Dr. Tapo in Ontario, Canada. Hoping everyone is doing well. We're now in mid-October. Today's the 15th, so like just halfway through the month of October, and we're quickly racing towards the holiday season, which is my favorite time of the year. I hope everyone is doing well. It's quite chilly here in Ontario. Like the temperatures have just dropped so quickly. And hopefully that doesn't translate to a harsh winter. So wherever you are, I hope you're well. I hope your loved ones are well, your friends are well, and everything is going well for you. This is Mental Health Hour, where we talk about all things mental health. And this is for educational and information only. This is about giving you the best information, raising awareness, some educating so that you can make the right decisions for you and your loved ones, especially if you have people who depend on you as their decision maker, as their primary caregiver, as their carer, to make decisions about their mental health. So I do not replace or substitute for your psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychologist, clinical counselor, social worker, church counselor, wherever it is that you get support from. My role is not to sub in for them, but it is simply to give you information so that you can make the right decisions about your own mental health and the mental health of your loved ones. We love to hear from you wherever you are in the world. Call us, text us, let us know what you think. Let us know what's been going on for you. If you've recently been to a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychologist, if you've recently been diagnosed over the last, I'd say, 3 months or so, we've talked about suicide and suicidal ideation. We've talked a little bit about anxiety, a little bit about PTSD. We are talking today about depression, which we started talking about a couple of weeks ago. And we've talked at length quite a bit about stress. Why? Because stress is like the gateway for a lot of mental health issues that we struggle with on a day-to-day basis. It starts with how we manage our stress, how we respond to stresses, how quickly we address stress in our lives instead of letting it go on and on until it impacts us in harder and longer lasting ways. Okay, so we're talking about depression today. I don't have any messages that I'm going to read out today, but just from last time, somebody had written in, I think they were from Accra in Ghana, and they talked about feeling really low. And for the first time in their lives, they were experiencing what they called, I think, bad thoughts. And what does that mean? What do you do about that? So we'll start off there because it's really, really important that you understand what is going on with you. There's some things that we tend to think it will just go away on its own. And the unfortunate thing is most mental health issues do not just go away on their own. It's like expecting your stomach ulcer to just go away on its own. It's like expecting back pain to just go away on its own. You cannot treat your mental health like it's something to dismiss, something to put aside, because the longer it goes unaddressed, the longer you allow things to go without addressing them head on, the more likely they are to get worse. And the sad part is when these things get worse, so does your physical health, so does your social life, so does your sometimes even financial health. There was a survey done, I can't remember, but it's been a couple of years, and they do these kinds of surveys all the time. And depression and mental health are like one of the main reasons why people miss work. And therefore, it impacts employment, it impacts the GDP of your nation is impacted by mental health. Because if most people are missing work due to stress, depression, anxiety, other mental health issues, the bottom line is your company is spending a lot of money, which means financially your company is not doing well. And if companies are not doing well, the economy is not doing well, and there we have it. So mental health is not something to dismiss. It is something that plays a huge role in how productive we are as human beings, how productive we are as providers, as parents, as spouses and partners, as citizens. So for those of you like in the US and in Canada talking elections, one of the things you really should be on to your politicians about is mental health support. Here in Canada, you can see a physician, so that would be a general practitioner or physician or a psychiatrist that is covered under under general health care. But you go see a psychiatrist, the psychiatrist tells you you need therapy, but you can't have therapy because therapy is not covered. So basically, you can't get treatment. You can get diagnosed, but you can't get treatment. And so, wherever you are in the world, these are some of the things you need to advocate for. We've had lots of people write in about their siblings, their parents, people that they love and really care about who have no access to mental health care, because a lot of our governments and politicians do not prioritize our mental health, and they should. They absolutely should. It should be covered under any type of health care. It should be accessible. There should be hospitals. There are some countries, cities, towns that don't even have a hospital or a ward or even a bed that is available for people that need it because of mental health. So let's prioritize our own mental health, but let's also expect our governments and politicians to make our mental health a priority. We are seeing more and more young people diagnosed with conditions like depression and anxiety, and they don't have access to the resources and treatment that they need. So imagine you're 13 years old, you're diagnosed with depression or anxiety, and you can't get treatment. What do you think life is going to look like at 23? What do you think life will look like at 33, 43, 53? Right? It doesn't get better by itself. People need access to effective, efficient, reliable mental health care. So let's do our part in making that happen for ourselves and for each other, whether it's by writing to your local politicians, asking some of these questions when they come knocking on your door and they're campaigning. Ask them questions like that. What about our mental health? Where does that fit in with your public policies, with your budgets, national budgets, and all of that? Mental health care is important, it is critical. Let's all expect it from our governments, from whether it's local, federal, provincial, whatever the case might be, even if it's your chief in the village. Go have a chat with him about mental health in your village, right? Let's all do our part. Let's talk about mental health. And the more we talk about it, the less we worry about stigma. Like the number of times I hear mental health, and right after stigma, it's like if I had $1 for every time people talked about the stigma of mental health, I would be very rich. I would probably be living like in Barbados or the Bahamas in a really nice place, because we always end the conversation of mental health with stigma. And the reason why is we're not normalizing getting care for mental health. And we need to do that. When people get colds, flus, infections, whatever it is, even STIs, in some spaces, people are more open about getting uh, STIs, gonorrhea, and all that than they are about feeling depressed or anxious. Like there's something really wrong about that, where you can openly talk about certain things, but the things that are actually hurting you and killing you, you don't talk about. Let's do better around that. Okay, so that's my spiel on that. Call us, text us. You can email infolovebay at gmail.com. So it's infolovebay at gmail.com to text or call. I need to look it up. Oh, I thought I had it. And I've been saying this number for 3 years. 437-778-3299. 437-778-3299. Text us, get in touch. What's been going on with you? Any questions you have about your mental health? Any experiences that you feel we can learn from? Please get in touch and let us know what's been going on for you. So, depression. We started talking about depression last week. Some people have said I kind of give so much information and it's such a short time, and that's why you find like weekly I repeat certain things, because I know, and that's how we learn, right? Through repetition. So I repeat certain things, and I try and take it step by step, like kind of scaffolding information. So last week we started off by saying what exactly is depression. And the depression we are talking about is clinical medical depression. It is what you are diagnosed with when you go to a physician or psychiatrist, right? It's not just you feeling low for a day and then tomorrow you're fine. That's not necessarily depression. When we talk about medical or clinical depression, we're saying you've been down, feeling these severe, intense, low feelings for a period of 2 weeks or more, nearly every day. So maybe you feel low today, tomorrow you're fine, but the next day you're low, 2 days later, and it's a real struggle to get out of that funk. And 2 weeks have passed, and when you sit down and think, if I were to summarize my feelings over the last 2 weeks, were you feeling sad, feeling empty, feeling hopeless, feeling kind of numb? Lots of negative thoughts, restlessness, feeling irritable, easily angered. So maybe you're somebody that can normally take a joke, but lately, anytime people joke with you, you're snapping at them. Now they're telling you, geez, you've really changed. We used to be able to joke and but these days, like nobody can joke with you, nobody can mess with you. So you find you're a lot more irritable, you're easily angered, you're feeling anxious a lot and restless a lot. And something I've said and I'll keep saying is, when we were talking about stress, a lot of these same symptoms can apply to stress. When we're talking about anxiety, a lot of these same symptoms can apply to anxiety. So it's really important that you understand that a lot of these things can look and feel the same. And that's why If you've been feeling like this for 2 weeks, you go to the doctor. Don't self diagnose and say, oh, it's just stress when I deal with this thing at work, or if I get a new job, or if I find a boyfriend, or if my man finally proposes, or whatever it is, I'll feel better. Go to the doctor. Even if you think you can explain why you're feeling that way, go to the doctor. It's if you've been feeling low, anxious, empty, hopeless, numb, restless, irritable, um, can't concentrate, poor memory, having a hard time focusing, making decisions, you've lost interest in things you've always really enjoyed. Like it's something that maybe you even say, oh, you know what, I'm an avid golf player. I play golf, but now you just can't, like, you can't be bothered. You really can't. Your mates call you and say, hey, let's go do this. And in the past, you'd have been first in line and you're making excuses. You're isolating more and more. So you're not participating in activities that you would normally have enjoyed. When your friends text or call, you're not really engaging with them. And then you start feeling guilty. You start feeling worthless. You start feeling just out of sorts, right? And then those repeated thoughts of suicide, of death, of ending it, and thinking like there's just no point to studying, no point to going to work, no point to this. So really, really low motivation, where in the past you might have described yourself as a go-getter, right? So a lot of these things look like anxiety, look like stress, look like even burnout. And so burnout, stress, anxiety increase your risk for depression, and you can see why, right? Physical symptoms, and again, a lot of these we talked about when we're looking at stress, when we're looking at anxiety. So some physical symptoms: low energy, feeling tired all the time. So there is a condition called chronic fatigue syndrome, and that can look a lot like depression as well. Again, don't self diagnose. Even if I'm listing all these things right now, don't say, oh, yeah, Dr. Tapo said this, so I'm definitely depressed, and then fold your hand, go to the doctor. Remember, this is for education, for raising awareness. This is information so that you can make the decision to go to the doctor. Go to the doctor. So, physical symptoms: low energy, feeling tired all the time, changes in appetite or weight. So, you're eating way more. Like people will say, oh, I tend to eat my feelings, and the last 2 weeks, the last 2 months, the last 2 years, like after COVID, where the number of people write in talk about, I ate through COVID, I just ate and ate and ate and ate, and I gained all this weight, and now I feel low and I feel depressed. And maybe what you didn't realize is before COVID, you were depressed. A lot of people talk about being high functioning in spite of poor mental health. So you still go to that job, you still maintain your relationships, but at night you can't sleep. You're eating way more or way less than you should. You have started using drugs and alcohol to cope, right? So we've talked before about alcoholism, alcohol dependency. And guess what? A lot of the symptoms of that look like the symptoms for depression as well. So go to the doctor. Do not self diagnose. It's okay for you right now, as I'm speaking, to be checking those boxes, but go to the doctor and get a proper diagnosis so you know exactly what it is you're dealing with and how to get treatment, what type of treatment is available. So you started using drugs. Marijuana is most common here in Canada because they've legalized it. And I cannot tell you how many people people I have seen in my clinic because they're smoking more and more marijuana to try and treat their depression or their anxiety. And guess what? It doesn't work. It does not work. I recall one young woman who, when she wakes up in the morning, the same way some people say, I can't function without my first cup of coffee. For her, it was, I can't function without my first drag of marijuana, right? So she'd wake up in the morning, first thing she has to smoke, just so she feels that she can handle the day ahead. She can't sleep without smoking. She can't do this. And guess what? Before long, she had dropped out of university. Why? Because marijuana is not good in terms of motivation. One of the most obvious and common symptoms of an overindulgence in marijuana is just no motivation. Your life is going nowhere, very slowly going nowhere. You used to go to school, you no longer do that. You used to go to the gym, you're not doing that anymore. You used to hang out with people. The only people you now hang out with are fellow tokers. If they don't smoke and you think they'll disapprove of you smoking randomly all the time, you stop hanging out with them. And so you now surround yourself with people that are also using marijuana at just ridiculous levels and cannot do anything more with your time or with your life. And then you get stuck. You get stuck. And yes, you get addicted. People think that there's no way you can become addicted to marijuana. I'm sorry. If you can be addicted to Coca-Cola, to sugar, to chocolate, to ice cream, what makes marijuana so special? It is addictive. Why? It impacts your brain. And the more you smoke it, the more the brain adjusts to that control that the marijuana has. Same thing with alcohol, right? So people like, oh, I'm just going to have a drink for because I'm feeling kind of low, I'm feeling down, I'll have a drink. Next thing you've had 5 drinks, 8 drinks, 10 drinks, and you start isolating. I also knew a man who, first thing he wakes up, he needed a beer. Did I say a beer? He needed alcohol, and not just a beer. He would drink like high whiskey, vodka with high levels of alcohol. And before long, he was completely dependent on it. He had burned a lot of bridges with his family. I remember his daughters came in, and that's how he ended up coming to see me. And the only reason why they came in is because he had the week before been admitted in the hospital, and the hospital basically said like he can't even stop drinking because his whole system is shutting down. Like, imagine getting to a point where there's no point in even trying to stop drinking because your whole system is shutting down. And I remember a colleague I was working with who was a physician, looked at the hospital report, looked at his lab results and all of that. And he said, I don't even understand how this man is walking. That's how bad it was. And it started with depression. His wife left him, and it was downhill from there. I've known people, a police officer, great career ahead of him, police officer, he got injured on the job, got depressed, started using drugs and alcohol. He lost his career, and it wasn't long before he was homeless. And depression can do this. The longer it goes untreated, the more you're trying to cope through drugs and alcohol, the worse it becomes. And you might think like it's only for now and then things will settle. And that's the thing. There's always a if this changes, and that if never actually happens. Your health should not depend on if I get that promotion, if I get that job, if if these types of ifs most times don't happen. And even when they do, you've already let this condition go for so long, you can't even do the job when you finally have it. You can't cope because you left things too long. So I really, really encourage you, if it's somebody you know and they've been dealing with something for a while, encourage them to get help. I always say, offer to even go with them. Hey, I'll pick you up, we'll go together, we'll grab lunch afterwards. Let them know they don't have to go it alone, especially if they are afraid, if they are confused, and if they're lacking. Like, one of the biggest things that depression impacts is just motivation to get up and go. I had one man describe himself as lazy. I think I've mentioned this before. And I remember looking at him like, you're not lazy, you're depressed. But you think you're lazy because you're lacking that motivation. You're seeing that you spilled milk on the floor 2 days ago. It's now dry. The flies have come and gone. The ants have come and gone. It's still there. And you keep saying to yourself, I need to clean it. But somehow you're just not doing it. It could be depression. It's something that's so easy, so simple, so beneficial, but you're not doing it. And you're thinking I'm lazy, which then brings in those feelings of guilt and worthlessness. But it could be depression. It could also be burnout. It could also be anxiety. It could be chronic fatigue syndrome. It could be a number of different things. So don't be so quick to label yourself as lazy, as worthless, as incompetent. It could be depression. So if you find you've been struggling quite a bit with motivation, especially if this has never been a problem before, like I said, you were that go-getter. If you see dirt on the kitchen counter, you immediately wash it. You don't let sinks pile up in the dishwasher, or dishes in the sink, whatever. But lately you can go 4 days without doing your dishes, 4 days without showering, 4 days without combing your hair, brushing your teeth. It could be depression. One of the things we look for and ask about are those types of patterns. Your outward appearance used to matter to you so much. Now people look at you and wonder, like, what happened to him? What happened to her? You used to go to the gym, you used to exercise, you really used to take care of yourself, eat healthy, get plenty of sleep, and now none of these things. It feels like you can't be bothered. It's not that you can't be bothered, you might have depression. Okay, so again, as I'm saying these things, think about it. Is this me? Get the help that you need. 437-778-3299. Text us, call us. I think we're on WhatsApp as well. Get in touch. Let us know what's been going on for you, for your loved ones. You have questions around depression. So those are the physical symptoms we've looked at, the emotional symptoms we've looked at, and then some biological things. So stomach aches, back pain, just sore bodies, and you don't understand, like, why am I always in pain? It could be depression. Why? Because the longer it goes on, the more it starts to impact your body. I've said before, we have to understand that our central nervous systems, and the brain is part of that, the spine is part of that, They're the ones that respond to everything going on around us, right? That external stimuli. So if your brain has to keep responding to these stresses and anxiety, depression, feelings of guilt and shame, worthlessness, all of that, it actually does translate to physical symptoms like diarrhea, constipation, sore stomach, back pain, chronic headaches. These are some of those things that if you can't explain it, but remember, I said, even if you can, go to the doctor. But you just have these bouts of pain, of fatigue, of diarrhea, and you're trying to think, what did I eat? But I've been eating the same thing I've always been eating, but lately I eat something and I need to go to the washroom. It's uncontrollable. It could have something to do with your mental health. So, on a biological level, there are a number of theories around what causes depression. So it might be something imbalanced, not quite working right in your central nervous system, so your brain, your spinal cord. Maybe you have some neurotransmitters that are not firing the way they should. Your hormones, neurotransmitters are substances that help the brain and the central nervous system function the way it should. And these neurotransmitters, uh, all of it, right, can impact your mental health on a biological level. So you have some people that will look at their lives, there's no particular event. It's not like there's something like grief, loss, abuse, whatever it is. There's no specific event, but they're depressed, clinically depressed. They have a hard time with motivation. They have a hard time concentrating and focusing. A lot of those same symptoms come up with them. It really could be an imbalance of your neurotransmitters, an imbalance of hormones in the brain, in the body, in the spinal cord. It could be some examples include serotonin. I think a while ago, yes, when I was talking about stress, one of the things that I said was stress at a hormonal level. Research has shown cortisol. I think it's cortisol. I'm not a physician, so some of these things, please go see your actual physician. I'm just giving you information and hopefully it's 100% accurate. But research has shown people with high levels of stress also have high levels of this hormone or substance or neurotransmitter called cortisol. And that also, people that have, I would say, a thick middle, right? You have skinny legs, skinny arms, everywhere else is skinny, but you have a big tummy. Stress can do that to you. It could be stress. So you go to the doctor, these are some of the things they check out. So the hormones in your body can impact your mental health and vice versa, right? So the more you subject your central nervous system, your brain, your chemicals in your body, all of this to these uncontrolled levels of stress, untreated anxiety, untreated depression, untreated PTSD and fatigue, and all of this, it really does start to impact you on a physical level. And that's why part of the treatment for depression is medication. And I've talked about this. So you go to your physician, they might prescribe medication for you. They might prescribe medication for you. So you need to be aware of this. You need to know this. And okay. I think I just received a question here from Anthony in Windsor. Is there a high or low levels when it comes to depression? Okay, that's a really good question. Thank you to our listener in Windsor. So there's mild, moderate, and severe. Mild depression is you're functioning well, you're doing okay, and with some lifestyle adjustment, maybe some rest, maybe some therapy, they won't often prescribe medication if it's mild depression. Same thing with mild anxiety and other mild types of mental health diagnosis. They will often say lifestyle changes, get rest, go for therapy. Moderate is where they start thinking in terms of medication. They definitely say go for therapy, maybe here's some medication. And remember, last time what I said, research has shown the most effective treatment is a combination of medication and therapy, especially for severe depression. And severe depression is you can't even go to work anymore. Getting out of bed is really, really challenging. You are suffering at a deeper level. So they will often diagnose mild depression, moderate depression, or severe depression. And based on that, they will decide what is the best treatment. So, yes, there are high levels and there are lower levels. And listen, the best way to try and avoid the severe and moderate kind is go in when it's still mild. It often doesn't. Like, I've never come across a client or a patient that started right off the bat with severe depression. That might happen in cases of extreme trauma, that suddenly you go from having zero depression symptoms levels, whatever, and then this severe huge traumatic event happens and immediately you go into severe. But in most cases it starts off mild, but people ignore it, think it'll just go away on its own, and it slowly becomes worse and worse and worse until it's severe. Think about it. You have mild depression, right? Let's go back to some of those symptoms I talked about before. Let's start with the emotional symptoms. Let's say you have mild depression. So 10 out of 14 days, you feel kind of low, right? You don't do anything about it. You're telling yourself, yeah, it'll go away. You're having difficulty concentrating. Now you're making more mistakes at work, and your boss is now on you for all these mistakes you're making. You're starting to forget things. It's still at mild, right? But because you're not addressing it, life is getting more complicated. Your boss is now constantly on you because you are making mistakes. You're now coming to work late. You're calling sick most days of the week. Things are getting worse. Your spouse is seeing you not showering. Maybe at first it was just you'd skip showering maybe once a week, maybe you'd forget to brush your teeth once or twice. Now you can't even remember when your teeth last kissed a toothbrush. Your spouse is now like grossed out by you because you don't shower, your hair's a mess, you stink. But it started off mild, and because you didn't address it, it gets worse. Now you and your spouse are always fighting and arguing. At work, there's no peace. At home, there's no peace. And on top of that, you feel like you're lazy, you're feeling guilty, you're starting to feel worthless. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse because you didn't address it when it was just mild. And this is not to say mild depression is nothing, because it is significant. It's important. I always say, listen to your bodies. With mild depression, maybe you're getting headaches here and there. By the time it gets severe, you're talking about migraines that last for days. I've seen this in people. So address it as soon as possible so that it doesn't get to that severe stage. Severe depression is a lot more challenging to treat, it's a lot more challenging to recover from. And normally, it won't come on its own. Like you're now talking about anxiety, possibly other things, even physically wrong with you, right? I knew one guy left the depression for so long, and one of the symptoms he was getting were chronic headaches, and he was self-medicating a lot. And the unfortunate thing is, because he never actually went to the doctor, some of these medications, you know how it is. You tell someone, oh, my friend, I've been getting headaches all the time. They tell you, oh, I have this remedy from Jamaica. They give you a remedy from Jamaica. Next week, it's your friend from Nigeria giving you a remedy. Then your friend from India also has a remedy. And then you're looking online for remedies. You have taken 10, 15 things, and your body can't even digest some of these things. You don't even know what they are. And really, all you needed to do was go to the doctor after 2 weeks of constant headaches and say, Doctor, I've been getting these headaches all the time. What does the doctor do? They'll do blood tests, they'll do labs, all of that. But you've been taking remedies from everyone but the doctor. And now your kidney is suffering, your liver is suffering, you're still getting headaches, and you're still depressed. And I'm not knocking natural remedies. I'm somebody who actually prefers them. But I prefer them having figured out with my physician's help. Or here in Canada, we have what are called naturopaths, who are trained doctors who have learned how to use natural remedies and treatments rather than some of these medications. So you can go to a naturopath or you can go to a run of the mill doctor. Both work. But what you need to first figure out is, why am I getting these headaches? Especially after 2 weeks of headaches and they're not going away on their own. Don't be taking remedies from people and you don't even know what it is. Headaches are often a warning that something else is going on. And you can take that remedy for a day or two, maybe then the headache comes back and it's worse. You really must know the diagnosis before you start taking things. And there's a lot of people who have done the learning on how to use herbs and all of that for treatment. And that's great. But take stuff like that from people that know what they're doing and what they're talking about. Don't just take from random folk because you're black, I'm black, our accent is the same, and they hand you something for your headache and you drink it without questioning. I'm sorry, but no. No, 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 no. If they give you something, put it aside, ask other people, especially, this is why I love elders. My grandmother was one of those women, like she knew what to drink, what to cook, what to treat anything, because she learned how to do that. And she had a proven track record. But some people don't. I've seen even on Etsy, on Amazon, people selling these like really dodgy things. Please get qualified help, whether you're going the natural remedies or you're going to a physician. Make sure it's somebody who is qualified to give you. Do not just take things and ingest them and you don't even know why you're getting those headaches. It could be something really, really wrong, and it's your body's way of saying, hey, we need help. And you're ignoring it. You're drinking marijuana, whatever it is, self medicating. And now people are throwing every remedy they've ever read about or heard at you, and you're just taking in things. That's dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. So, to answer Anthony from Windsor, which is a city in Ontario, yes, there are mild, moderate, and severe types of depression. And when you go get diagnosed, that is how they will diagnose it: mild depression, moderate depression, severe depression. And the treatment is usually dependent on those types of things. Okay, so why else? So we said biologically, it might be something's not working as it should, like your neurotransmitters, your hormonal imbalances, all of that. Women, especially women on birth control, are at higher risks for depression. So you might have started taking birth control recently, and it's normally the oral ones, I think, that have the higher rates of depression, even anxiety in some situations. So if you've been taking birth control, you just started it, and you noticed your mood is like all the time, or it's worse at certain parts of the cycle than it's ever been, it could be your birth control. And maybe you need to look into a different type of birth control, right? So, women and hormonal changes as well. We know, like in puberty, as menopause is approaching, perimenopause, all of those, depression can actually trigger some of those things, or be triggered, rather, excuse me, be triggered by changes in your hormones as a woman. I once had a man ask me, "Do men go have what was it? Do men experience menopause?" Because when your testosterone levels change, also, you're more likely to experience depression. So changes in testosterone levels can also result in depression. So on a biological level, this is why you need to go to the doctor. They can test for these things and be able to tell you and advise you if it's lifestyle changes, if it's hormone replacement therapy, if it is like even your diet, right? You need to have a proper diagnosis and a proper understanding of why you have depression. And then there's some, I think last week we mentioned briefly psychological factors. So things like grief and loss that could result in clinical depression. But research has also shown that sometimes it is the way a child was raised. If they were raised in a severe and strict upbringing, a lot of negative comments, negative criticism, absent parents, absent father, absent mother, sadly, even poverty as well, always worrying about the next meal, about the lights, about a roof over your head. So, even some of these things in childhood could result in depression as an adult. Why? Because for a long time, this is that going back to stress and why stress can result in depression. So a child that grows up in a stressful environment, maybe they're seeing their parents fighting all the time, dad beating mom, mom beating dad, whatever the case may be, maybe a really horrible contentious type of divorce, and they're caught in the middle. So this child is subjected to high levels of stress for a long period of time. They are likely to become clinically depressed. And you might think, well, that was their childhood. Now they're grown. But remember, like I said, the longer you let these things happen, the more severe it becomes and the more challenging it is on your life generally. Okay, so really pay attention to how you're raising your children. I always say this almost every mental health hour. I have to say this to parents because I've seen so many. The oldest I've seen was 76 years old, and this man was crying. He was 76 years old. He'd been married 2 or 3 times, had 3 children, bad relationship with all of them, could never, like, I mean, and this guy was an engineer, great career, but his home life was in shambles. And this man, 76 years old, and he broke down crying because of the way he was raised. The way he was raised. And the parents were long gone, like he was 76, long gone. But the way they raised him, the constant negative comments and criticisms, abandonment, all of this, his whole life was impacted. And at 76, he was still crying about his childhood. So parents, like, really, really, honestly, the way you raise your kids, don't make it about you, because one day you'll be gone, but the impact of your parenting will last as long as your children and their children and generations after that. And you'll be gone. Okay? All right. Another message here from Durban, South Africa. And I so want to be in Durban right now. Please, people in Durban, send me a ticket. Okay, Dr. Tapo, thank you for the topic. This is my first time tuning in. My friend always say that she's depressed but doesn't know why. She's always bubbly. What may be the problem? Okay, so your friend always says they're depressed and yet she's always bubbly. So let's talk about that. There are a lot of people that know how to fake it. And some of them say fake it till you make it. Unfortunately, depression is not one of those things. Mental health in general, you can't fake it till you make it. You can smile, you can be bubbly, but those people are the same people that one day you wake up and hear that so and so took their life, and you're like so confused because they were always smiling, they were always laughing, everything seemed great. It's like that guy who used to be on Ellen DeGeneres' show. What was his name? I can't remember. I mean, this guy was posting TikToks and that, dancing with his partner, always laughing. Like, he built a career on being happy, but he still took his own life. So you might have some of those friends that will say, I'm depressed, but when you look at their behavior, it doesn't seem depressed. Start by believing them and ask them questions. You want to talk about it? So why do you think you're depressed? Offer them resources, talk to them, let them know you're available. But also, if they're saying they're depressed and they don't know why, tell them to go to the doctor. And even if you do think you know why, go to the doctor. Go and get properly assessed. And I keep saying this, if you have not been to the doctor for 2 years or more, for 1 year or more, go. Not because you're sick, but just go and say to your doctor, please, I just need a physical. And what that means is they will do labs and tests and just make sure your body is good. So there are those people, a lot of people. And when we're talking about suicide and suicidal ideation, remember I said sometimes somebody who might have been low for a while and you were really concerned, suddenly happy, they're calling people, they're giving things away, they seem bubbly and all of that. It might be that they now have a plan to end their life. So ask them, Oh, you seemed low and depressed the last few months, and now you're all bubbly and happy. Like, are you good? Like, really, really good? Like, ask them, be direct. Remember, I said, especially when it comes to suicide, thoughts of death, be direct. This is not a place to beat around the bush. Be direct. You've been depressed for months, and now all of a sudden you're bubbly, you're doing this, you're doing that. I want to know why. Are you sure you're okay? And then ask them straight up, have you been thinking about hurting yourself, taking your own life? And look at them and ask. Don't beat around the bush, ask, right? So your friend may be bubbly, but if she is actually depressed and she's opening up and saying it to you, believe her and offer her support. Offer her support. And the first thing advice you can give is go to the doctor. Go to the doctor, get tested, because it might be hormonal, it might be a biological thing, especially if they're saying, like, I don't know why. It could be a biological thing. Okay. The other thing is people love just being I don't know, and this, like, and I've said this before, those people who talk about my anxiety, oh, I'm depressed and my anxiety, and they have no actual anxiety and they're not actually depressed. They like attention. So I don't know, and I'm not saying to our listener in Durban that your friend might be attention seeking, but people do. And even for those attention seekers, just in case, tell them to go to the doctor. And the next time they tell you I'm depressed and you suspect they might be attention seeking, ask them, did you go to the doctor like I said? They'll, oh no, I just decided to. Yeah, so call them on it. Listen, if you were really depressed, you'd go to the doctor, because somebody who's really depressed is not going to be acting the way you do. I just feel like with mental health, we need to stop beating around the bush. We need to be honest. We need to destigmatize by normalizing talking about mental health, and then taking away from those that just throw words around like it means nothing. So I don't know if your friend is attention seeking when she's saying I'm depressed, yet always bubbly, or she might be actually depressed. And this bubbly thing is something she's doing in front of people, doesn't really want people to know that she's in pain, that she's suffering, that she's struggling. Sometimes it might be the stigma. Sometimes we don't trust people enough. Sometimes it's those feelings of guilt and shame. Like everything's going well for me. What right do I have to be depressed? Something people always like, and this is something that I don't like, even when my clients say this themselves. I should be grateful. There are people that are hungry. There are people that don't have homes. There are people that don't have jobs. Yes, but that does not minimize what you're going through. So don't feel guilty because your mental health is not good. If there's anything you should feel at all, is determined to seek treatment, to seek help, and to feel better. Don't ever feel guilty and be telling yourself, well, there's people that go to bed hungry and I have all the food that I want. There's people that don't have homes and I have a roof over my head. There's people that does not take away from the fact, and it should not take away from the fact that you are in pain. Don't do that to yourself. That's the guilt speaking. When you find yourself saying, I have no right to be, that's the guilt speaking. And the thing is, the more you allow that guilt to speak, the less likely you are to get the help that you need. Okay. So please get the help that you need. Don't listen to the guilt. Don't feel like you have to have an explanation, an acceptable explanation. Like if you say I'm depressed and somebody's like, oh, look at you. Why would you be depressed? Do not let those things cloud your judgment and make you feel like you shouldn't get the help that you need, or make you feel like you should hide it or dismiss it. Get help, get help. So I hope to our listener in Durban, and thank you for getting in touch. Thank you for listening in. I hope more people will send their questions and their comments so that we grow together as a community and watch out for each other. 437-778-3299. So 437-778-3299, or infolovepay@gmail.com. Email infolovepay@gmail.com, or text 437-778-3299. So next week, if we have more questions on depression, we'll continue with that. So please send in your questions, send in your comments. And yeah, watch out for your mental health and for the mental health of your loved ones. Be that person that encourages people to be healthier. Be kind, be compassionate, and have a wonderful rest of the week, of the month, and of the year 2024. Good night.